You make $65,000 a year. You have $8,000 in your savings account. You're contributing 6% to your 401k to get the company match. You paid off your credit cards last year. You have a budget spreadsheet that you update sometimes. And you're lying awake at 2 a.m. wondering, am I doing okay? Am I on track? Or am I completely screwing up my financial future while thinking I'm doing fine? Your friends seem to have it together. One just bought a house, another's planning a trip to Japan, someone at work drives a Tesla, but you have no idea if they're actually ahead of you or just deeper in debt. And nobody talks about real numbers, so you're left wondering if you're winning or losing a game where no one will tell you the score. Here's the brutal truth. Most people have no idea if they're on the right financial path because they're measuring the wrong things. They're tracking metrics that feel productive but don't actually tell them anything meaningful about their financial health. And by the time they realize they've been heading in the wrong direction, they've already lost years, sometimes decades they can't get back. My name is Bob, and I spend way too much time thinking about how people can know if they're actually building wealth or just going through the motions. If you're someone who's trying to do the right things with money but has no idea if it's actually working, or if you're constantly comparing yourself to others and feeling behind without knowing if you actually are, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today, I'm going to give you the real metrics that actually matter, not the feel-good checkboxes that personal finance Instagram tells you to hit, not the arbitrary milestones that don't account for your actual life, the actual concrete numbers and benchmarks that will tell you definitively whether you're on track to be financially secure or whether you need to make some serious changes right now. Here's the thing. Most financial advice gives you a checklist. Have an emergency fund? Check. Contributing to retirement? Check. No credit card debt? Check. And then you're supposed to feel good about yourself and trust that everything will work out. But that checklist doesn't tell you if you're saving enough. It doesn't tell you if your emergency fund is appropriately sized for your actual risk. It doesn't tell you if your retirement contributions will give you the retirement you're imagining, or if you're going to be eating ramen at 70. Look, I'm going to be blunt. According to a 2023 Federal Reserve study, 40% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing or selling something. 40%. But I guarantee you a lot of those people think they're doing fine because they have some money in savings and they're not currently in a crisis. This is where it gets really interesting. Most people gauge their financial health by how they feel, not by objective metrics. If you're not stressed about money this month, you assume you're doing okay. If you manage to take a vacation, you must be ahead. But feelings are a terrible metric because you can feel fine right up until the moment you're not fine, and by then it's too late to course correct easily. Okay, let's get specific. Here are the 5 metrics that will actually tell you if you're on the right path, and I'm going to give you the exact numbers you should be hitting, because vague advice like save more doesn't help anyone. This is the big one. Your savings rate is the percentage of your gross income that you're saving and investing, not spending, not even not spending on dumb stuff, actually putting away for your future. Here's what most people don't realize. Your savings rate is the single biggest predictor of financial success, not your income, not your investment returns, your savings rate. Let's do the math. If you make $70,000 a year and you save 5%, that's $3,500 a year. If you save 20%, that's $14,000. Over 30 years, assuming 7% average returns, the 5% saver has about $354,000. The 20% saver has about $1.4 million. Same income, same returns, 4 times the wealth. The only difference is the savings rate. Now you might be thinking, but Bob, 20% is impossible. I have rent, I have a car payment, I have student loans. And look, I get it, but here's the benchmark. If you want to retire comfortably, you need to be saving at least 15% of your gross income. That includes your 401k contributions, employer match, IRA contributions, everything. If you're saving less than 15%, you're not on track. I don't care if you feel fine. I don't care if your friends are saving less. The math doesn't care about your feelings. If you're saving 5%, you're going to work until you're 70 or live on a drastically reduced budget in retirement. Those are your options. Here's the good news. If you're in your 20s, you can get away with a slightly lower rate because you have time. If you're in your 40s, you need to be above 15% to make up for lost time. The younger you start, the easier the math is. Let me give you a real example. Someone I know is 32, makes $80,000, and saves 8%. She thinks she's doing well because she's putting money away, but at that rate, by 65, she'll have about $1.2 million. Sounds good until you realize that in today's dollars, accounting for inflation, that's really about $650,000 of purchasing power, and she'll need to make that last 20 to 30 years. If she bumped her savings rate to 18%, she'd have $2.7 million, or about $1.5 million in today's dollars. That's the difference between comfortable retirement and I hope Social Security still exists retirement. Your net worth is everything you own minus everything you owe. And here's what actually matters, not the number itself, but the trajectory. A lot of people in their 20s and early 30s have low or even negative net worth because of student loans. That's not necessarily a problem if the trajectory is upward. The question is your net worth growing at a reasonable pace? Here's a rough benchmark. By 30, you should have about half your annual salary in net worth. By 35, 1 times your salary. By 40, 2 times. By 50, 4 times. By 60, 6 times. By 65, 8 to 10 times. So if you make $70,000 and you're 35, you should have about $70,000 in net worth. If you're 40, you should have about $140,000. These aren't hard and fast rules. Life happens, some people start later, some have different circumstances, but they're useful benchmarks. Here's what most people don't realize. If you're consistently behind these benchmarks, you need to make significant changes now. Not, I should probably save more. Significant changes. Because the compounding works both ways. If you're behind at 30, you'll be really behind at 40, and you'll be catastrophically behind at 50 unless you intervene. Let me tell you about someone who ignored this. He was 38, making $95,000, and had a net worth of about $50,000. He should have had $190,000. He's $140,000 behind. But he felt fine because he had some money in his 401k and he wasn't in debt. Fast forward to 45, he's making $110,000 and has $180,000 in net worth. He should have had about $385,000. Now he's $205,000 behind, and it's getting harder to catch up every year. The trajectory matters. If your net worth isn't growing by at least 15 to 20% of your income every year, you're not on track. Look, not all debt is bad. A mortgage is fine, student loans can be fine. But here's the metric that actually matters. Your total monthly debt payments should not exceed 36% of your gross monthly income, and ideally, it should be below 28%. If you make $6,000 gross monthly, your total debt payments, mortgage, car, student loans, everything, should be below $2,160, and ideally below $1,680. Why? Because when too much of your income is locked into debt payments, you can't save, you can't invest, you can't weather emergencies, you're trapped. According to Experian, the average American has a debt-to-income ratio of about 43%. That's above the threshold, which means the average American is financially overextended and doesn't even realize it. Here's the trap. People focus on whether they can afford the monthly payment, not whether the debt is destroying their ability to build wealth. You can afford a $600 car payment in the sense that you can make the payment every month, but if that payment is preventing you from saving adequately for retirement, you can't actually afford it. You're just not feeling the consequences yet. This is where it gets really interesting. Someone making $75,000 with $2,500 in debt payments feels like they're doing fine because they're making all their payments on time, but they're only saving 5% for retirement because they can't afford more. That person is on track to be broke in retirement, but they won't realize it for 20 years.
Everyone says have an emergency fund, but nobody defines what that actually means relative to your specific risk level. Here's the real benchmark. Your emergency fund should cover 3 to 6 months of essential expenses if you have stable employment and no dependents. But if you're self-employed, it should be 12 months. If you have dependents, it should be 6 to 9 months. If you work in a volatile industry, it should be 9 to 12 months. Essential expenses means rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments, not your current lifestyle, the amount you need to survive. Most people have woefully inadequate emergency funds because they're measuring in absolute dollars instead of relative coverage. I have $5,000 saved means nothing. The question is, how long can you survive on $5,000? If your essential expenses are $3,000 a month, $5,000 is less than 2 months. That's not an emergency fund. That's barely a cushion. One job loss, one medical issue, one car breakdown, and you're in debt. Here's what most people don't realize. An inadequate emergency fund means you're always one crisis away from derailing your entire financial plan. It means that when something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, you're going to pull from your retirement accounts, rack up credit card debt, or make desperate financial decisions that set you back years. Someone I know had $8,000 in her emergency fund and thought she was prepared. Then she got laid off. Her essential expenses were $3,500 a month. That $8,000 lasted a little over 2 months. She had to pull $12,000 from her 401k to survive until she found a new job. Between taxes, penalties, and lost growth, that $12,000 withdrawal cost her about $60,000 in future retirement funds. A specific multiple of your income based on your age. Here's the benchmark from Fidelity. By 30, have 1x your salary saved. By 40, 3x. By 50, 6x. By 60, 8x. By 67, 10x. So if you're 40 and making $85,000, you should have $255,000 in retirement accounts. If you're 50 and making $100,000, you should have $600,000. Most people are nowhere close to these numbers. According to Vanguard, the median 401k balance for people in their 40s is about $76,000. If those people are making the median household income of about $75,000, they should have $225,000. They're $149,000 behind. Here's the thing. These aren't arbitrary numbers. They're based on what you'll actually need to maintain your lifestyle and retirement. If you're significantly below these multiples, you need to either drastically increase your savings rate, plan to work longer, or accept a reduced standard of living in retirement. Now you might be thinking, but Bob, these numbers are impossible. I can't have 10 times my salary saved. And look, if you start in your 20s and save 15% consistently, you'll hit these numbers. It's not impossible, it's just math. But if you start late or save inconsistently, yeah, it becomes very difficult. Here's where most people screw this up. They measure their financial success by comparing themselves to their peers instead of comparing themselves to objective benchmarks. Your friend bought a house. Okay, but did they put 3% down with a massive mortgage they can barely afford? Or did they put 20% down after saving diligently? You can't tell from the outside. Your coworker drives a nice car. Is it paid off, or is it a lease they're overextending themselves to afford? According to a 2023 Bankrate survey, 78% of Americans say social comparison affects their spending decisions. 78%. We're making financial decisions based on keeping up with people whose finances we know nothing about. This is where it gets really interesting. The people who look the most successful are often the least financially secure, because actual wealth is boring. It's a paid-off house, a 15-year-old car, and $2 million in index funds. That doesn't photograph well for Instagram. The trap is thinking that visible consumption equals financial success. It doesn't. It usually equals the opposite.
Okay, enough diagnosis. Let's talk about what to actually do if you realize you're not on track. Step 1. Calculate your real numbers this week. Sit down and calculate all 5 metrics. Don't guess. Use actual numbers. What's your savings rate? What's your net worth? What's your debt-to-income ratio? How many months does your emergency fund cover?
What's your retirement savings multiple? Write them down. Compare them to the benchmarks. Don't judge yourself. Just observe where you are. Step 2. Identify your biggest gap. You probably can't fix everything at once. Pick the metric where you're furthest behind. That's your priority. If your savings rate is 5% and it should be 15%, that's your focus. If your emergency fund is 1 month and it should be 6, that's your focus. If your retirement multiple is 0.5x when it should be 2x, that's your focus. Step 3. Create a specific plan with numbers. Not, I'll save more. Specific numbers. I will increase my 401k contribution from 6% to 10% starting next month. I will redirect my $200 monthly subscriptions budget to emergency fund until I hit $18,000. The plan needs to be concrete enough that you'll know in 3 months whether you followed it or not. Step 4. Automate everything. Whatever you decided to do, automate it. Automatic 401k contributions, automatic transfers to savings, automatic extra principal payment on your mortgage. If it requires discipline, you'll fail. If it's automatic, it just happens. Step 5. Measure quarterly. Every 3 months, recalculate your metrics. Is your net worth growing? Is your savings rate holding? Are you hitting your targets? If not, why not? Adjust. The people who succeed financially don't just set it and forget it. They measure, adjust, measure, adjust. Here's what I need you to understand. There is no ambiguity about whether you're on track or not. The math is the math. You either have the numbers or you don't. And if you don't, hoping and wishing won't fix it. Feeling anxious about it won't fix it. Only changing your actual behavior will fix it. The good news is that it's almost never too late to course correct if you're willing to make real changes. The bad news is that the longer you wait, the more painful those changes have to be. If you're 25 and you realize you're behind, you can catch up by saving an extra 5% of your income. If you're 45 and you realize you're behind, you might need to save an extra 25% of your income. Same destination, very different level of sacrifice. This is why knowing whether you're on track matters so much, because the earlier you know, the easier the fix is. Look, most people go through their entire lives never knowing if they're on track financially. They just hope it works out. They compare themselves to friends who are probably also behind. They tell themselves they're doing okay because they're not in crisis right now. But hoping isn't a strategy, and by the time you know for sure that you weren't on track, it's retirement age and your options are limited. The 5 metrics I gave you today, savings rate, net worth trajectory, debt-to-income ratio, emergency fund coverage, and retirement savings multiple, will tell you exactly where you stand. No ambiguity, no guessing, just math. And here's the thing. Once you know where you stand, you can either feel good because you're on track, or you can make changes because you're not. But at least you know. You're not lying awake at 2 a.m. wondering anymore. So here's my challenge. This week, calculate all 5 metrics. Write them down. Compare them to the benchmarks. Be honest about where you actually are, not where you wish you were or where you think you should be. Because you can't get on the right path if you don't know which path you're currently on. If this video helped you understand where you actually stand financially, hit that like button and subscribe. And if you're realizing you're not on track, don't panic. Just make a plan. Start with 1 metric. Fix it. Then move to the next one. A year from now, you'll either wish you'd started today, or you'll be grateful you did. Now go calculate your numbers.